Ironman is a business and this is their business model so they can make more money. And kudos to them. That's what you do when you're in a business. You want to, do things to make more money for yourself. And at the same time, I think a lot of athletes have a sour taste in their mouth, and especially those men who thought they were going to Kona in 2023 who aren't anymore.
And welcome back once again to the Endurance Hour Podcast, episode 382. Welcome back this week. And it's a snowy week here on the west coast of Washington State. But I assume in Georgia, you got some clear skies and you can go outside, right?
No, it's been rainy.
Oh.
We started the week off with lots of fog. It's really warm. Yesterday it hit about 73 degrees, but warm and humid, lots of rain. And I told someone yesterday if it was, below freezing, we'd have so much snow if this rain turned to snow. So it's definitely been a relatively warm December. I've lived here. This is my 6th winter in Georgia. And it's a little bit warmer than past winters. Usually we've had a little bit of snowfall or some freezing temperatures by now, but we haven't. I'm not complaining. I do like the warmth.
It is a change of pace from your time in Colorado, though.
Yeah.
When it could be snowy one day, clear skies the next day. The weather seemed more unpredictable there.
Definitely.
Well, this is an unpredictable outcome for a lot of people, in a way, is the Ironman World Championship. We touched on this last episode, but our time was cut short. Ironman is going to split the World Championship locations by gender beginning next year and beyond. And some of it is based on the pressure from the local community in Hawaii. So Ironman announced that the men's field will no longer be racing there in 2023. They're going to be doing some swapping. Was it France back and forth?
Yeah, it hasn't been confirmed that they're going to be in Nice, France, but that's the speculation.
What's your initial thought when you saw this? Because when I heard this and you sent me to an article, in the comments section, someone had said, hey, I just qualified for Kona in a recent Ironman. And they said, who wants to go to Hawaii next year? And they go, yes. And everyone went up and they paid their fee, because you have to pay day of if you want to accept your slot to Kona, which is, it's a big payout. But from my understanding and the feeling that I'm getting is that the WTC knew that they wouldn't be in Kona next year, even though they said who wants to go to Kona next year. So some people in the comment section were saying, I feel like I was misled. And now if I want to go, and let's say my spouse goes, if it's a husband, wife, man, woman combination of some kind, they can't go together because they're splitting it up. Reaction.
Yeah, I mean, my initial thought was I wasn't surprised that there were more changes going on with WTC. I think, if COVID didn't happen in 2020 where everything was shut down and all races didn't happen and lots of changes were made because of that, I think things would be different. This past year when they split the men's and women's race, it was still exciting. It was huge. I prefer the 1-day format versus the 2-day format from a spectator as well as athletic standpoint. And I was surprised that in 2023, before 2022 Ironman World Championships happened, they announced that the event would continue to be a 2-day event in Kona. And I was surprised they announced that already, having not ever had a 2-day event before. I thought they'd wait and see how it worked out. And then obviously most people have heard parts of the island didn't like it as a 2-day event. Too many people. Again, it brought lots of revenue. So there's definitely a positive for them. I'm not surprised that Ironman is making more changes. I'm a little bit surprised that they would split up the men's and women's races on 2 different months in 2 different countries. And again, it doesn't impact me as much because I'm not going. I wasn't planning on going. I feel for the athletes who recently qualified and thought they were going to Kona. even not recently, basically qualified in 2022 for 2023. They thought they were paying this increase of $400 from last year's fee to go to Kona. And I think the allure to Kona is the World Championships. Not that it's a World Championship, but I think of racing in Kona
Hmm.
is definitely a different vibe than anywhere else. And then to add the title of a World Championship makes it that much more awesome. So again, it's been a couple weeks or at least a week since this announcement, reading a lot of other people's comments, and just a lot of thoughts that I've had. Again, it's sad that if you are someone who tends to go with a spouse, one person maybe going to a different country, different month, it adds up to a lot of expenses. And Ironman is a business, and this is their business model, so they can make more money. And good, kudos to them. That's what you do when you're in a business. You want to, do things to make more money for yourself. And at the same time, I think a lot of athletes have a sour taste in their mouth, and especially those men who thought they were going to Kona in 2023 who aren't anymore.
Hmm.
Um, it may decrease the amount of athletes participating. You know, it's again, I'm not invested financially and emotionally right now because I wasn't planning on going, and I'm not a male. So it's just, kind of weird. But interesting to hear other people's comments, especially the spouse one. If
Yeah.
you have two people or even friends and family, I still think going back to a 1 day event. Again, if a 2 day event was too much for the island to handle and for Ironman to handle, especially from a volunteer perspective, then I think they should just go back to the 1 day event and limit like they have, for 30, 40 years, however long Ironman's been going on, limit the amount of participation and just go back to the way it used to be in 1 day event on the Big Island every year.
One thing I read was the stress on resources in the community and running out of things, because sure, you split it up, but now you open it up to more people who can race, which means hotels are going to be extra booked, and rental cars and food supplies won't be as readily available. And then the people who live there on a day-to-day basis are going, gosh, now it's harder to even get around, more harder than it used to be when it was a 1 day event. And if that formula was working, why not maintain that formula? But hey,
Right.
they're not there's no law that they're breaking. This is their rules. This is the rules that we accept. If you want
Hmm.
to play on their playground, well, that's the rules that the WTC it says we're going to go. You don't have to do it. I mean, you don't have to accept a slot,
Right.
but it does change the direction of what it is to be an Ironman world champion, a competitor. But I can see the global scale that this
Hmm.
allows for other athletes who maybe couldn't afford to go from somewhere in Europe all the way across the globe to Hawaii.
Exactly. There's
Yeah.
just there's just pros and cons in
Hmm.
every direction. It just depends who you are and how emotionally and financially invested you currently are and,
Hmm.
kind of plans for the future. I think you said the right thing though. Again, it's ultimately if we want to play on the WTC playground, it's our choice
Yeah.
or not.
We're signing up
And
for, just like NFL players are signing up for, the potential of concussions or
right.
long-term physical problems after the game is over.
Right. And I think just the main issue is Ironman, I think, was misleading. I think they misled other athletes into thinking they were going to race in Kona when they weren't. And, to increase participation in the sport, they keep saying we increase participation in the sport. Well, you don't have to be a triathlete to do an Ironman. You can increase participation in the sport from a local level. And, so again, I think they're just they're misleading people. And in the end, we all know it's a business decision. They're going to make a lot more money, and that's what it's about. And
Well,
that's their choice, and that's what it is.
I think it also is probably going to be, they've weighed the numbers. It's a short-term loss, and in this world that we live in, people have a short-term memory, and the new athletes coming in won't know or won't feel slighted by this in two
Hmm.
years. Like, what did they do to us? I know it's a tight-knit community. This is a very
Uh-huh.
interesting fraternity, sorority, whatever you want to call it, of Ironman participants. And yeah, they're going, okay, we're going to take a PR hit initially, and then the news cycle continues. even the
Mhm.
multi-sport community will move on into something else.
Right.
Right. What a great time to do it, if you can do it, is during the winter when the season really dies down. And then people jump back into it and go, oh yeah, that's right. They're splitting it up, and they'll maybe forget about how feelings were hurt, and this is the new reality. New reality. We're going France here, we're going Kona here. Women there, men there. That's just the new norm.
The
And
new
people,
reality.
yeah.
And again, I think you touched on a good point. The up and coming triathletes don't have a history like you and I do
Hmm.
with racing Ironman. Especially someone like me. I raced in 1997. I was 24 years old. It was different back then. They changed the course since then. And so, I have the history investment in Ironman that I'm going into this whole thing with a different perspective than someone who's like, I don't care. I just want to do a world championship. They don't they're because they're starting next year, they're going to start in a few years, and they don't know the history of everything. So yeah, that was a good point.
You talk about the business of this sport. There's a good little article on triathlete.com, 10 questions with Ironman CEO of this week's World Championship split announcement. So Andrew Messick does a little chat with them. It's basically in text form. But anyways,
Hmm.
answering the thought process going into this. But I want to go on what I know from kind of an insider at one point.
Uh-huh.
Back in 2012, I was covering the 70.3 Panama race, and
Hmm.
that was Lance Armstrong's return to the sport. And so I got called up because I was covering for them as a video or reporter and stuff. So we go down to Panama, and it hit me that the business angle hit me more than it has ever hit me, because I'm working with the marketing managers, the PR people, the advertisers, just because a lot of the staffers are there ahead of time. And it was brought up that uh, the city, the country, the whoever it was in the area uh, from Panama bought a license to license the event there. So that's how it works. People buy a license to have the event, but they didn't know how to run the event. So this is the weird little twist. They hired Ironman to run the event. So basically, it was an Ironman run event, but Panama paid the rights to do so. So they basically it's just someone who had a bankroll that said, "I want to bring attention
Right.
to our country or to our area of Panama City, Panama. Boom, here's X amount of dollars. I need someone to do this because I had know nothing about triathlon or how to run an
Uh-huh.
event. Who does? The WTC. So here's another. It's almost like they double dipped. They got a double dip out of it because
Uh-huh.
someone wanted to host the event. So the people who run the events, the business part of it, aren't necessarily triathletes. And that was the twist for me as a athlete who also covers the sport. I look at all things as an athlete perspective. I know the questions to ask, I know the terminology. I've been there multiple times. So when I'm there, I'm interested in the event.
Hmm.
Oh, how'd you prepare for this? How are you going to deal with the roads or the transition from here to there? All these different things triathlon related, but the team that was hired to run the event, which has run events before because that's what they do, but they were just hired
Hmm.
to run their own event. That's what they do. They don't think about the athlete, they think about the event. So when I see these
Uh-huh.
announcements or these additional events being planned where now you have, in some cases, half a dozen events or more on the same weekend around the globe, these are just business decisions. And it's not really an athlete's point of view. They're
Hmm.
just not just, it is a business. I mean, it's not personal. I guess the bottom line is this is not a personal
Right.
thing. This
Yes.
is, like you said, the business model. And they're running a business, and they're going to run the numbers too. Will it work if we do this? Will it work if we do this? Where do we take the loss and where do we make the gains? Oh, we're going to lose participation here, but we have 3 times as many events. So we're going to make up for it. Going to hurt some feelings, but there's
Hmm.
always a new batch of athletes, of customers who are
Hmm.
coming through the door, entering, leaving, entering, leaving. And unless you're a lifer, unless this is your lifestyle, you don't know. I mean, if I were to enter the world of CrossFit, I don't know the history of CrossFit. All I know is about let me learn about the workout of the day, or oh, there's contests. Oh, cool. What's that all about? I don't have a history of how it got to that point. I just know when I stepped into the chapter of this story.
Hmm.
So that's how I'm kind of looking at this. I'm not taking it personal, um, but some people, this is their identity.
Yeah, that was a very good perspective and analogy with the CrossFit.
Isn't? Are
Yeah,
you
I mean,
familiar with
because I'm the
CrossFit?
same way. I was thinking of a Spartan, I want to get more into Spartan races.
Yeah.
I don't know any history of Spartan races.
Yeah.
If I sign up for a race in March, and
Yeah.
if they change the course, I have no idea what the original course was. So I'm going to have
Uh-huh.
no investment or care. I just
Yeah.
want to do it. I just
Yeah.
want to be a participant, and I want to experience, you know, the Spartan race that I signed up for. And that's all I know about it is I'm going to do some physical activity and I'm going to do some running and then I'm going to cross the finish line and be like, "Oh, that was fun. Maybe I'll do it again."
I think the same thing with Xterra. I love that concept, and I was in it for a short period of time. Loved it, but a very tunnel vision as an athlete. There, it's like, where can I go to do an Xterra? I don't
Yeah.
think about what their logistics are, what their financial challenges are. I just think about, where's the course. It's a first time course for me. Cool. I don't know what they did the year before, or
Mhm.
what issues they had with the community, or the community had with that event.
Mhm.
I just want to know where one is,
Right.
and I'll do a couple of them, and then I'll think of something new to do. And
Exactly.
they're going to always adjust, adapt, and run their business as best they can. I wish Xterra was more popular. I know it's from working on the inside, because I worked with Xterra a little bit during that period of time. The people behind the scenes.
Uh-huh.
Uh, it's not a huge moneymaker. It's a small field of athletes. They're very talented, uh,
Uh-huh.
no less talented than the Ironman or road triathletes.
Mhm.
They're just as strong and probably even tougher because of the off-road course part of the running and the cycling. I mean, they're hardcore, but I don't think they get enough credit for being as tough as a road triathlete or road Ironman.
Right. Right.
They're just they're they might be the better athletes, just
Yeah.
overall strength athletes.
Yeah, it's just a different type of personality as well. Just like
Oh
trail
yeah,
runners are
yep.
different personalities and people than a road runner.
I always thought that always got me a little bit, is that someone could be a professional triathlete as an Xterra athlete or an Xterra world champion. They're a
Mhm.
world champion triathlete, but it's a smaller field. Not that it's easier, but you have fewer competitors in
Mhm.
that field. But
Mhm.
you still have to get there. You still got to beat the best of the best.
Right.
But it seemed like an area where it's like, oh, if you want to be, quote, and have on your resume, a professional triathlete, you can do that in the world of Xterra triathlon and be
Mhm.
a professional if you really wanted to.
You're right.
If you're already at a certain level, you have fewer competitors, so the chances are better.
Yep.
So Kona, France, Ironman World Championship, it's a global event, and who knows? This is similar to, I don't know how much you listen to or follow college football. I don't follow the games, like watching the games, but I'm hearing a lot about how there are playoffs, how different conferences are merging, and it's becoming, you never know where the bowl game is going to be, or where something's going to be. It's becoming a global scene where they'll change every couple of years.
Mhm.
We're in France and Hawaii now. Next thing you know, it could just be a rotating, who knows where the world championship is going to be next, and which will make it
Yeah.
more challenging for the athletes who want to compete on those platforms.
Yep. And I think from a world perspective, the rotating venue is the way to go. It
It's
is
tough though,
to
because you had that consistency of Kona and knowing what to expect and being the best on that, where everyone knows what to expect. So now they're all
Mhm.
preparing to be the best on that place. Whereas if you took someone and took them to France, I don't know the terrain there, but someone could have a,
Right.
a strength that they don't have in Kona, and they could be better just because this person's a better hill climber. That
Well,
everyone's equal on swim and run, but hills, they're better. Therefore, they're going to win on that course.
right. So if it's not going to be in Kona each year,
Yeah.
I think they should rotate it and not do men in one venue, women on the other. I think the rotation and have men and women on one day is the way to go. And if they can't do that every year in Kona, they should, wherever they are, they should keep the men and women together. That's my take on the whole thing.
We're going to lose a lot of the, I don't know, the aura of a world champion if it's constantly changing. There probably
Hmm.
won't be a consistency of, oh, this person has won it 3 times. They're the best at this course, because you could have 10 different champions over 10 different years.
Mhm. That's
The
true.
way if they do continue to rotate it, and you don't know. I don't know if you ever find out who is the GOAT, the greatest of all time. You won't. There won't be a way to say
Right.
same course every year. Now we know who's the best, who has the PR, who has the best run time, the bike time. The wins
Right.
weren't as crazy this year.
Right.
Just like
That's a
going
good
to
point.
yeah. I don't know. That was one of the topics we were going to discuss last week, and that's why we didn't have time for it, because we didn't have an extra 25 minutes at the time to discuss it. But hey, we'll see how it goes, and more feedback from athletes. If you are an athlete who qualified and it got switched on you, what are you going to do? Are you going to defer? Are they going to allow you a deferral? I'm sure they're going to do something like that. They did
Mm.
that with the old COVID with Iron St. George, Kona, and so on.
Yep.
They'll do something to try to make it right. Something. Hey, you're getting ready for another one of those challenges for New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve, aren't you? With a swim challenge?
Yeah, so I every year, um, in December, I don't know how many years I've been doing this, but I like to do a December swim challenge. I think swimming is the weakest sport for most triathletes. December seems to be varied weather in most locations, so it's a good time to train indoors. So why not focus on swimming? So I've done a lot of variety of different swim challenges, and I posted in our T2 Endurance Facebook group. And I'm also will be participating in my 12th annual 100 by 100 yard slash meter swim on Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend Kirsten and I also participate in a New Year's Eve challenge, which is this year will be 23,000 yards to ring in 2023. That is over a half marathon. And my goal was to say, once I get hit over a half marathon, I think I'm going to call that challenge, put it to rest, and start something new. So if anyone wants to join the challenges, I'm gonna make another announcement in our newsletter about it.
Okay.
Definitely join the T2 Endurance Facebook group so we can, support each other and answer any questions you have, and kind of just hold each other accountable for whatever your challenge is going to be. It doesn't have to be swimming. There's some people doing other things in our group, and again, it's just a great place to go and chit chat and talk about our strengths and weaknesses and what we have questions on.
We had a question from Cam inside the T2 Endurance Club on Facebook. He says here, quick question. I'm trying to plan out a couple of 70.3 races this year, probably meaning next year. I'm a reasonable swimmer. Give some times here. I'm looking at Oregon 70.3 that has a down current swim. Here's my question. Does a down current swim help a weak swimmer more than it does a strong swimmer? Hopefully I worded that so y'all understand what I'm asking right now. So my instinct is, who does it help? Does it help a person more than the strong? I'm not sure if it. You tell me, because it would make me not work so hard if I'm just kind of going with the flow. But does a swimmer go even faster because they're going with the flow, or does the flow throw off their rhythm?
So if the flow is even, across the width of I think it's a
Oh, the
river
current
swim.
is all the way through versus
Yeah,
like in this
if it's
canal.
even, and me and you and I, let's say your 1.2 mile is 35 minutes and my 1.2 mile is 30 minutes. Both things being equal, we start at the same time and we have the same current pushing us, and we both swam at our normal 70.3 effort. Let's just
Yeah.
say RPE 567.
Okay.
Then if you're 5 minutes faster, I should be 5 minutes faster. Even though
Okay.
I'm a
So no
even though
benefit.
I'm a stronger swimmer, if we just swim our normal 70.3 effort, both having the same current pushing us, we should
Mhm.
be the same amount faster than we normally are. Now, having said that, I think a downstream current is better for a weaker swimmer because it gives them more confidence that they're going to finish the swim and under the time limit. A lot of athletes I've coached over the years, sometimes they pick downstream swims purposefully because they're borderline, pushing that hour, um, or I think it's an hour and 10 minute cutoff time. So they want
Mhm.
that even in an Ironman, if they're pushing that 220 cutoff time, they want to pick a course that's going to help them manage and be more comfortable and confident that they're going to make the time cutoff. So that's why I think a downstream current helps a weaker swimmer than a stronger swimmer.
Got it. I thought for a second that um, that if you push a little more effort into it as a stronger swimmer, you can go faster because it's almost like a tailwind because of your technique is better
Right, but I'm going to
versus
be
the
faster,
weaker
but
swimmer.
so are you. So is the weaker swimmer.
Yeah, but your technique would I was thinking your technique is better and your energy that you have to put out isn't as much. But I guess if you're both going the same effort, like you said, RPE, okay, that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, now me as a swimmer, right. So I'm a swimmer and I have a tail current and I'm going to crank it. I'm going to go harder than I normally would. Well,
Yeah.
then I'm going faster. I should be faster.
Yes.
So again, there's just other variables to put into play because he did also mention he's stronger than his friend. So he wanted to know if he was 10 minutes faster,
Oh.
would his friend be 10 minutes faster as well?
Uh-huh.
Or there was some twist in there that we continued the conversation in the Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely think I answered, you know, the question as best we could.
I got three more questions, but I want to ask you, this time of year, we've been selling training plans on Training Peaks for I don't know how long, a long time. And we've got a couple dozen training plans on Training Peaks, and
Hmm.
every one of those plans, because if you listen to us, we tell you you can get a 33% discount on every one of those plans. And I think it's even in the description. So you buy it, you use the code, I think it's 33%, right? At
Yeah.
checkout, you
Yeah.
automatically deduct that from the cost of your plan. What plans are you noticing are more popular this time of year in the off season for a majority of us versus other times of the year?
That's a good question. And I just want to comment because it's December is a swim challenge month. We're offering 50% off all our swim programs on Training Peaks. So just wanted to mention that. I mentioned in our newsletter. So
Oh,
I,
get the newsletter. That's absolutely get the newsletter because then all the details are there and the codes and the hyperlinks to that. So endurancehour.com, click the newsletter, sign up for that. We get two newsletters a week. One's a recap of the podcast, one is all about discount codes. Go ahead.
yeah. So, I was comparing this year to last year at this time because there's a lot of Ironman and 70.3s. There's a lot more 70.3s in the spring. Our beginner 70.3, our couch to 70.3, our couch to Ironman, our beginner Ironman plans tend to start selling in November, December, and January
Hmm.
because of those, March, April, May, June events.
And
And so we
what's the
do
lead up time for these plans? How many weeks? 16, 24,
16,
36,
16, 24, 32.
32.
Yeah,
So if
depending
you
on
have a
which one you get.
so if you have a race at a certain in April, back time it and look at the plan that best fits that.
Yeah.
Uh,
And we tend to for like off season, like we've talked about, swimming's a good time to work on your off season is a good time to work on your swimming. Our
mhm.
How to Swim Faster in 30-day program tends to start picking up on sales this time of year as well,
That 50% discount code, how long is that good for the swimming programs?
till January 5th.
Okay. So less than a month. Get that, save it, hold on to it. It's yours for life and save 50%.
Yep.
Rob asked this question. That's why I led with this. I haven't done any Ironmans yet. I have not done one, but I'm planning to do one. How do you know when you're ready to start training for it? Running's not his issue, but how do you know when you're ready to start training for an Ironman? Is there something physical or something mental? Is it based on your calendar? When do you know?
Everyone's different. When I read this question, the first thing I thought of is when you have a strong enough why and
Mm,
reason to do an
mm,
Ironman. So if anyone contacts me with a question or they're contacting me about my coaching services and they tell me they're going to do an Ironman, first thing I ask them is why do you want to do an Ironman? Because I think it's really important to understand why you want to do it because there's so many issues that you could face when training for an Ironman. So having that strong why is important, but also being able to swim. Over the years, I've coached so many athletes, including athletes who sign up for an Ironman and they can't swim. Like they really, really, really struggle in the water with breathing, body balance, and just the basics of swimming. So for those athletes who have, 32 weeks, 24, 32 or more weeks, they can get ready. But it's important to know how to swim. It's important to be able to have a facility that you can swim at. I've also coached athletes who say, I want to do this Ironman in 6 months, but I don't have access to a pool yet.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you have the facility and the equipment. You want to have a bike. Same thing, I've coached athletes who come to me and say, I take spin classes, but I don't have a bike yet. What do you recommend? So it's important to, as you're deciding, do you want to do an Ironman? Number one, what's your why? What's your reason? Can you swim? Do you have a bike? And, and can you run? I mean, can you swim, bike, and run? I think it's also important. I always encourage athletes, try not to do it's harder to do an Ironman as your very first triathlon. So I'm always encouraging athletes to give themselves time. And, maybe you'll know you're ready to do an Ironman if you get experience doing sprint, Olympic, and half Ironmans first. Maybe run a marathon. Maybe though doing those of the other events and getting those experiences will help you solidify your reason and why for wanting to do an Ironman. And then also making sure you talk to someone like a coach or others who have done it to understand the time commitment with training, and having your significant others on board with you to understand, your change in lifestyle. If it's going to be a drastic change in lifestyle for you, training for an Ironman, how it's going to be different now than it was before. I think that kind of stuff is important to talk about.
And that trial and error of doing a shorter distance race is invaluable. And the thing that stands out to me immediately when you say don't make an Ironman your first triathlon is nutrition. If you don't know nutrition, you are done. You cannot get through an Ironman without proper nutrition, not without the knowledge of proper nutrition on the day. You might be
Mm-hmm.
able to crawl across the line in 17 hours, but you're not going to be a happy person. You're going to be really going, oh, I should have looked into this more. I should have hired somebody to hold my hand along the process, because that's a huge mistake. Therefore, Olympic, you can get by on those sprints with very little nutritional information. Olympic, it'll start to kick in like, oh, that makes sense. Half Ironman, oh boy, there it is. That's the red flag. I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing. You don't want to go into an Ironman without knowing about what it takes nutritionally for you and in
Mm-hmm.
general, because you'll be screwed. I'm just telling you
Yeah.
like it is.
No, that's a really good concept. I mean, nutrition is almost like, you have swim, bike, run, T1, T2,
Yeah.
and then you have, the sixth component is nutrition. The seventh component is pacing. The
Uh,
eighth component is the mental strategies that you want to
yeah.
be prepared for in training
Yep.
and race day, and how you're going to adapt to situations that don't go your way, or to something that happens to you and it's never, it might happen race day and it's never happened to you in training. You want to be prepared for there's so many factors that go into an Ironman. It's not just swim, bike, run. And
No.
again, you already pointed out the nutrition component. So, um, why rush? I think if you're someone out there who, maybe had just seen Kona on TV last month, or you've heard that, you heard us talking about it and you think you might want to do an Ironman. If you have doubts, then you're not ready right now. Get more experience. You can be a triathlete and it doesn't mean you have to do an Ironman.
The flip of that depends on your personality, what type of personality you have. You can sign up for it, and that deadline creates urgency.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like if someone says you have 3 weeks to read this book, or I give you 3 months to read this book, you're going to read the book before the deadline's over, regardless if it's 3 weeks or 3 months.
Yeah.
If you sign up for an Ironman, your deadline starts now. But if you wait until you think you're ready, yeah, you may never, you never know. It all depends on your personality, though. If you know who you are, it's like, I need something to kick me in the butt. One thing that I recognize as a tip to pass along in your training that I noticed in the Ironman, even half Ironman distance, if you get done with a workout and you're hungry, you didn't do it right. That's one of those little things that you recognize during training, during the preparation before a big, longer distance event. I remember sometimes that my stomach would be growling and go, why am I so hungry?
Mm-hmm.
You didn't fuel properly. You didn't fuel
Mm-hmm.
before the training workout. You didn't fuel during the workout. I'm extra thirsty. Or why do I have all this white residue on me, sweating out salt? Whatever it may be, these are
Yeah.
things you discover in training for these things that will prepare you for the longer distance.
Yeah, and I'll say one final thing. Even when you train for one,
Yeah.
you never know how prepared you are until you cross the finish line. So going back to the if you sign up for one, well then you have to be ready for it. And again, no matter what you do in training, you will never know until you cross that first finish line. And then you use all that data that you've collected within your training, you look back at your
Mhm.
training logs, and just kind of processing what happened race day, and you determine what worked, what didn't work, and then you decide, do I want to go longer, do I want to stay the same, do I want to get faster? And then the whole lifestyle will come into play with what's your longevity in the sport.
Two more questions on our list today. We'll get to them kind of quite quickly here. Chris, regarding recovery times from training. Coach, what metrics, methods, or techniques can we use as endurance triathletes to understand when we've reached an optimal state of recovery for our day-to-day training? I want to make sure that I'm recovering in the most effective way.
I like to keep things simple. I think if you don't feel recovered, then you're not. It's definitely a perception and getting to know your body, um, how it is before your session, during, and after, and just the experience will help, tell you that. And I know in the past I've also used heart rate. I used to train with a heart rate monitor, and get to know what your true resting heart rate is in the, taking your heart rate in the morning, not when you wake up to an alarm, just one day when you're waking up naturally, what is your heart rate? Take that over a period of consecutive days to determine what that is. And if you're feeling fatigue, well then go back to your heart rate and see what your heart rate's telling you. If it's 10, I like to say 5 beats or more above your normal resting heart rate, then you are fatigued. You might need a day off, or you might just need a couple of easy active recovery days. And so there's a lot of information online about how to use heart rate for recovery and determine if you're recovered. Also, just acknowledging how much sleep you're getting and if that's enough for you, because whether you're getting enough sleep for you or you're not. And I think sleep as well as nutrition are the best two recovery tools that you have access to help you ensure you're recovered. That post-training recovery meal is really important to enhance recovery, as well as sleeping is huge.
Yeah, sleeping seems to be the foundation. You got to get rest to recover.
Yeah, and so another quick thing is I don't use metrics other than heart rate monitor, but there's lots of data out there on HRV, heart rate variability. That's on a lot of people have these aura rings.
Yep.
I'm showing my hand right now. These aura rings I don't know much about, to determine they wear this ring that's an indicator, whatever they're measuring, to tell them that they're recovered or not. And so that goes with the whole heart rate variability. And again, I'm not the expert on that, but that's something that you can do your own research on.
The whoop strap too is what
Oh
I've
yeah,
heard
yeah,
about
yeah.
those.
Whoop, yeah.
Whoop strap. If you are keeping a log, then you can recognize trends.
Hmm.
Like if you kept, oh, I slept 4 hours. I slept 4 hours and I slept 2 hours. For me, I'm not complaining. I'm just going to tell you how it is. I can't remember the last time I got 5 hours of uninterrupted sleep. I usually have a 4 and a 3 because we have dogs and I have kids,
Hmm.
and it's frustrating because I don't get consistent sleep. If you're able to keep a log of your day-to-day sleep, followed by what you did that day, and then give yourself an RPE at the end of this little diary, and then go back and see how they all correlate. What was I doing during this stretch or this week, and where are the consistent numbers? Where am I off? And I think you'll, if you're that disciplined to keep that kind of log and look back at it, give yourself some time. Give 20 minutes. Can you imagine if you only spent 20 minutes looking at something like this and recapping? You'd be so much better off. That an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure kind of thing. You look at it, just take a little time
Yeah.
and follow the trends.
Yeah, and then just also look up signs of overtraining. We've talked about that on the podcast. If you have loss of appetite, if you're not sleeping well, if you're moody and irritable, if you're high stress due to work, job, family, whatever it is,
Mhm.
those are signs that you're possibly not recovering and going into that overtraining syndrome mode. So that's another thing you can look into.
Last question for this episode from Laura. First time Ironman tips. I signed up for my first Ironman Florida 2023, her first triathlon. Hopefully, Laura, you listened to our previous discussion about signing up for your first Ironman and what you should do prior to that. She says here, I run marathons and I've taken spin classes. I'm wondering where to start with equipment. Any suggestions for a bike? Where to look? What to look for? Other equipment I will definitely need. This has been discussed, but for Laura, she hasn't heard it yet. So, Coach, go ahead.
Well, I saw this question and I pulled up some blogs that I used to write on my website. Tips for a successful season, racing on a budget, advice on choosing your first iron distance race, as well as getting started right when you're thinking about training for an Ironman. So I have a bunch of articles I've already written, and this is stuff we've talked about on the podcast. But as far as equipment goes, we did already mention it. Make sure you get a bike, make sure the bike fits, make sure it's within your budget. Research bikes, equipment, and components, and saddles and bars, because when you go to the bike shop to purchase one,
Mhm.
or if you go online and you're going to purchase something used, you want to have some knowledge of what creates the price range that it is. And I've done a video on the Endurance Hour YouTube about choosing your first bike, whether it's a road bike, triathlon bike, or a mountain bike, and why the prices range so much. And what was her question? Now I'm totally forgetting.
About, let's see, where to start with equipment, suggestions for a bike, where to look, what to look for, other equipment she will definitely need.
Yeah, so you go to, maybe you have a local triathlon club or a cycling team. Start training with them and ask them questions, because they're local support. They'll definitely help you get familiar and get in a good relationship with a local bike shop or triathlon shop, whatever you have in your area. The bike is necessary. You need proper running shoes. Make sure you get the right running shoes for your gait and your form. Make sure you need a swimsuit. Cap and goggles are optional, but yet necessary. And then if you're going to race in cold water, start investing and looking at a wetsuit.
Well, you know about Florida, since you've done that a few times. Is there something special about Florida, equipment-wise, or preparation because of the water temperature? I mean, is
Yeah,
that wetsuit legal? I mean, wetsuit
that's
required?
a good point. Usually, except the year I did it, the water temperature is going to be in the low 70s.
Okay.
And it's going to be, you're going to see people in a wetsuit. You're going to see people in a full body wetsuit, a sleeveless wetsuit, and maybe some core shorts. So if the temperature is 76.1 or less, you will be able to wear some sort of buoyancy wetsuit, whether it's a full body or just the core shorts. If it's above 76.1, then wetsuits are not legal. You could still wear one, and if you do choose to wear one when the wetsuits are not legal, you won't be eligible for any type of prizes, and you'll have to go at the end of the line and be one of the last ones in the water.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah. So on that
Oh,
note, again, especially if you're a weaker swimmer, you're going to want to wear a wetsuit. You're going to want something. Making sure it's not equipment related, but making sure you're getting plenty of open water swim experience. The Gulf could provide you with some riptides, and that makes it for a little bit slower swim and a little bit more anxiety for you, especially if you're a weaker swimmer. As far as equipment on the bike goes, it's a fairly flat course. There are, maybe there's 1,000 feet of elevation gain over 112 miles, which is still pretty flat. But make sure you get comfortable riding in your aero bars if that's something you're going to use. Making sure you're comfortable spending a lot of time on training on flat courses in aero bars, because that's going to mimic what race day is all about. And then as far as the run goes, usually the average temperature outside is probably going to be in the high 60s, low 70s. So, as it gets closer to race day, you can look at temperatures. You can start looking at videos and reading other people's blogs about what they wear depending on the temperature.
and in some cases, haven't they canceled the swim before? I don't know if it was waves or
Yeah,
what.
they have canceled the swim
Weather.
due to riptides.
Riptides. Okay.
If the
Okay.
riptides are dangerous and,
Yeah.
people are really going to struggle. People struggled the year I did it. I did it in 2021, and I recall there were 500 DNFs, people who
Mm.
didn't finish the swim because the riptides were so strong. They just couldn't make, they did the first loop in like an hour or over an hour, and they knew they couldn't do the second loop, and they knew they wouldn't make the 220 cutoff. So they decided themselves that they were going to pull themselves. I don't know how many people were actually rescued, but no one, everyone survived, which is good. But that's a high DNF rate for the swim because of the riptides were so strong.
I don't know what I would do if all that time of the cycling and running, and I had to be pulled, or I had to make that decision that I'm not going to continue. It would be so defeating and
Yeah.
frustrating
Oh, yeah.
that the conditions determined your day and not your fitness level.
Right. Totally. I get it.
Laura, I would say with your local triathlon groups, people are so generous. They can be so generous and with information, with hand-me-down equipment. I mean, everyone has an extra wetsuit. I mean, no one's you buy a wetsuit, you wear it a couple times a year. Someone's got
Right.
one for you, and they're going to tell you their trial and errors, and you're going to learn a lot of tricks of the trade, shortcuts that'll help you learn faster. So the more you're around triathletes who've done Ironmans in a tri club, the better off you'll be with equipment you need and what you don't need, because people are going to suggest certain things that are just extras, and they're going to let you know what's necessary.
Hmm.
Good questions today, good topics, and yeah, I like this. Rob, Chris, Laura, the face group question from Cam. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year for, I guess, the Ironman athletes who are thinking about Kona and so on, but it's an evolving landscape for sure.
Hmm.
So sign up
Yeah.
for that
And I
newsletter,
love
guys.
people. I love the submission of questions because it takes me down memory lane.
Yeah, especially right now when it's about recapping, it's about reviewing what you've done
Yeah.
and what you want to do and
Yep.
what's ahead. And if you
Exactly.
want to reassess your future and set your new goals based on that why, that'll make a lot of sense. Final thoughts, Wendy, as you're leading into, I guess you talked about your swim challenges and your New Year's challenges. Anything special over the next couple of weeks before the New Year day?
No, you know what? I'm just getting more into trail running and, um, setting a set time to get those swim challenges completed again.
Yeah,
And, December's a pretty calm time for me, kind of more relaxing time for me and my lifestyle. So I'm enjoying it.
very good. Good. Well, with that, with episode 382, thank you so much for listening. And as I mentioned a couple times, the newsletter on endurancehour.com, just to stay up to date on what we have produced for you, the discount codes that you can take advantage of. Those are great. I mean, it's all about saving dollars. It's a very expensive sport at times. And if we can help you save a few bucks, great. They're going to have deals all through the holidays, and take advantage of them as much as you can. For Wendy Mader, I'm Dave Erickson. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great week of training, racing, and recovery. We'll see you next time. Adios.
Adios.